In the last segment, I referred to the other or lesser known Holocaust, and this would be the Holocaust of the Jewish people from the Sephardic lands, such as the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, Portugal, and also the Mizrahi Jews of North Africa and the Middle East. Many people, including Dr. Henry Abramson, argue that the Holocaust is usually incorrectly perceived as an event that only affects Ashkenazi Jews or Jews from the Eastern Europe area, and not so much the Sephardic and the Mizrahi Jews. Many of these Jewish people from these lands have a very rich and ancient culture. For example, Jews that have lived in the Arab countries of North Africa and the Middle East, things like Algeria, Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Morocco, Syria, Tunisia, and Yemen. Some of these communities have been there since the biblical times. In 1939, more than 850,000 Jews lived in these countries. These Jewish people were not immune from the challenges faced during the Nazi occupation of many countries across North Africa and the Middle East. Many Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews living within North Africa and the Middle East were living under the Ottoman Empire. These communities were relatively secure and prosperous during and before the war. Unfortunately, they did have to pay a non-Muslim tax called a dhimmi tax, but they were relatively prosperous under the Ottomans. Many people may be unaware that the Ottoman Empire allied itself with the Axis powers, so unfortunately the Holocaust did eventually make its way to the Jews of these areas under the Ottoman Empire. Where the Holocaust did arrive, it seemed to be mostly where territories were controlled by Vichy France and by the fascists in Italy. In Tunisia, for example, the Vichy government introduced a series of Nazi-inspired anti-Semitic laws in 1940. Interestingly, the governor and monarch delayed implementing the order in order to minimize their financial impact on the Jewish people living within his realm. Eventually, deportations began to forced labor camps in 1942, where the Germans took over and occupied the lands held by the Vichy France and the Italian fascists. Some deaths were avoided by the capture of Tunisia by the Allies, which helped some Jews survive and avoid the fate of their neighbors. Many of these non-Ashkenazi Jews faced persecution and deportations to camp, just like their European counterparts. What was one interesting fact that tied a lot of the Ashkenazi Jews together in the concentration camps was that they were able to speak similar language. Many Jews of Europe would speak Yiddish or some form of German and Yiddish together that allowed them to communicate. So when someone would come to a concentration camp, it would allow them to be able to speak and understand and help others. So for many of these Sephardic Jews who would speak Ladino, which would be a mix of Hebrew and Spanish, they would arrive to the concentration camps at a very big disadvantage and not be able to communicate with the other people at the camp. They would have a much more difficult time trying to communicate and make their way around the camp. Many people who have studied the Holocaust are realizing that there is this forgotten aspect of the Holocaust that deals with the Jews outside of the Ashkenazi background. It's a very unique history, and we need to make sure that we not only teach the European view, but also all views of Jewish experiences during the Holocaust. In the end, it is very important that we make sure that we not only teach about the Holocaust in all of its aspects, but we make sure to keep that in our schools in order to make sure that people are not learning the wrong information and misinformation through sources like social media and online. We need to make sure that we follow the quotes of the past, which is to never forget. This has been another episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I want to take this time to thank everyone who's been supporting the show, everyone who's listening to it. It is incredible to see the reach that we've had. Don't forget to follow us on social media at jdr.podcast. Thanks for all your support, and we'll see you next time.